been, yeah, there we go. Bismillah. Yeah, big F. It's, see, rage bait.
Minions have
Okay.
into battle with hearts aglow.
Okay, how's the connection?
It looks the same.
Can
You're,
you see me?
no, you're not, it's very slow.
Okay, let me try a different. I'm in a coffee shop. Let me try a different connection.
Okay, no problem.
Just 1 minute.
You're saying so they have internet in the coffee shop? Only specific people are allowed to have access to the internet. It's not like anybody in the coffee shop can get the internet. Early stream W, yeah, good to see you guys. It's the Epstein regime. Okay, what should I ask him? So, my perception, and I don't think this is actually a reason to not, okay, well.
Okay, can you see me now?
Yes.
Is this better?
Inshallah, I think that is better, yes.
Okay, sorry. I'm in a coffee shop and it's actually downstairs, so the connection is probably worse. I should have sat somewhere upstairs, but they told me the connection here is better. I misunderstood.
It looks good now.
Here.
Looks good now.
Okay. We're live, right?
Yes, we're live right now on YouTube and Kick.
Oh, sorry about that then.
Oh, no, it's okay, no worries. So you were talking about Trump's visit, and you're saying that the major points is that the war has been won by Iran, even though it still is ongoing. Trump is declaring victory, but it's still happening. And you're saying that the world isn't taking the U.S. seriously. But if the world isn't taking the U.S. seriously, then why would Xi Jinping have this meeting with Trump, Hegseth, Rubio, and 30 billionaires?
Well, it's not as if the United States has been wiped off the face of the earth. It's still the United States of America. But this isn't the United States of 30 years ago. It isn't. I mean, if you go back before 9/11, and whoever was behind 9/11. I mean, after watching the Tucker Carlson documentary, I think any sane person would recognize that it wasn't just some Al Qaeda operatives, even though Al Qaeda was funded and assisted by the Western intelligence agencies and the regional proxies. But if you look at his documentary, it wasn't just them and other. I mean, I used to not believe this sort of thing, and I used to be very dismissive of people who spoke about 9/11 being more than just these terrorists. But I think differently now. But if you go back before 9/11, the United States, before all these endless wars and many tens of trillions of dollars that they've wasted, the United States was a different country. It was a much wealthier country. It had a strong middle class. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, it was it was at the top of the world. It was what a French intellectual once called the hyperpower. But and it's not just Trump who's brought it down. These endless wars and neoliberalism and all these insane policies combined have very rapidly weakened the country. So, but still, it is a powerful country. And so, obviously, when the Chinese will take the United States seriously, I mean, we take the United States seriously. When they threaten our country with death and destruction, we take it seriously. But it isn't what it used to be. It doesn't have the leverage that it had before. And for the Chinese, as a rival superpower, they're obviously they're moving ahead of the United States. While the Americans are wasting billions of dollars, trillions of dollars on wars, the Chinese are developing. I don't know if you've ever been to China, but they're developing their infrastructure. If you go, sometimes people would say Shanghai is a very beautiful and well-developed city. I've been to maybe 10 different cities in China, all of them with at least 5 to 10 at least million people, all very developed, all very advanced, far more advanced than any city I've seen in Europe or North America. So they've been moving to develop their own, their country.
What
That's why, the United States is no longer where it is anymore,
what
where it was.
what is the relationship right now between China and Iran, and historically, what can we understand about that connection? Because it seems like there is some sort of alliance. You have BRICS, but what is the trade like, and what's that geopolitical relationship between China and Iran?
Well, one of the things about Iran and China is that we've never had war.
I have bright ones.
And we've had thousands of years of relations. The Silk Road that you've heard of, and many people have heard of in history books, that was a trade route that connected Iran to China. Thousands of years, both by land and by sea. I was in Guangzhou last year, a year and a half ago, at an exhibition of Iranian and Chinese artifacts that showed the trade that took place between Iranian ports and Chinese ports, meaning the Guangzhou area in particular. And it was fascinating how they were influencing each other, the artists and the creators and those who were making utensils and things like that, kitchenware or other things that people use. How the two sides were selling them back and forth, and how they were being influenced by each other in creating or in innovation and creating new goods. So the history of Iran and China has never been hostile, and that goes a long way to creating trust. The United States, even though it's a new country, doesn't have a history like Iran or China, but our history with the United States since 1953 has been pretty dark. They carried out a coup in Iran alongside the British, and it's been downhill. In 1953, it's been downhill ever since. So when you don't have that dark past, it's easier to build bridges. And Iran and China, Iran being a very, very independent country, probably unique, definitely unique in the world that we live in, as being the most independent country, even though it's not a superpower, or at least in the traditional sense of the term. Because it's highly independent, because it has shown no hostility towards the Chinese people, this has helped create very favorable environment for trade and business and cooperation. The problem with the United States and much of Europe is that they cannot put aside their exceptionalist, their Eurocentric worldview. In a sense, and I'm speaking about the elites. I'm not talking about ordinary people.
You can be the light.
But in a sense, they're not all that different from Zionism. The Zionists consider themselves to be a master race, a master people, a people who are human, and the rest of us are not so much human. For those who believe in American exceptionalism, or who have a Eurocentric worldview, we are also lesser people. And when you treat the rest of the world as lesser people, it may work for you when you have overwhelming power. But once the rest of the world begins to grow stronger, it begins to strengthen different countries, different parts of the world, technologically they develop, and their state institutions become stronger, then they push back. They push back more effectively. They always would push back. The resistance would always be there. During imperialism, there was always resistance. For example, often they would speak about the lazy native. When the colonialists were like, they take part of Africa or part of Asia or wherever, or the Americas, but that lazy native was not a lazy person. That was one form of resistance. When you were working for the master and you're the slave, he's the guy with the whip, he's the guy with the sword, he's the guy with the gun. So you're not able to shoot back at him. The only thing you can do is to try not to help him. Try to be try to be uncooperative, not to be the helpful. So all of these were different forms of of resistance in the past. But when countries and different parts of the world rise, then the resistance grows. And Iran, because of its religious ideology, Islam, it's in Shia Islam in particular, it's the role that Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Holy Prophet, plays in resisting oppressors on behalf of the oppressed, the role that his sister played in Karbala, that has a huge influence on Iranians, their support for the oppressed. That's why they are so adamant about supporting the Palestinians, the Cubans, the South Africans, the Bosnians, and so on. And then there's this heritage of civilization, thousands of years of heritage, and also the very fact that they're a victim. When you are a victim, it makes resistance for you more meaningful. If someone has stolen your home, you have reason to resist. But if you carried out some sort of aggression, your motivation for violence is less, unless you make it ideological and you consider yourself to be a master race or a master people or a superior ethnicity or superior in some sort, which we do see in Zionism and we do see in among the elites in the West. When what's his name, Joseph Borrell, who was the EU foreign policy chief until just a couple of years ago, he said that Europe, the EU, we're the garden, and out there is the rest of them that they're the jungle. That means we're the jungle, we're the barbarians, we are the animals, we are the uncivilized, and he and his people like him, they're the civilized people sitting in their gardens and in their coffee shops and being sophisticated and humane. But ironically, they're the ones who support genocide in Gaza and now the genocidal attacks in Lebanon and wars of aggression against Iran and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. So was China supplying intel or military equipment or anything to Iran? Because I saw some reports that Russia was giving intel to Iran, and China did say some things alluding to the fact that this war between the U.S. and Iran is unnecessary. What can we say about that diplomatic relationship right now? What side is China on? Are they on any side at all? Do they care, or are they just completely neutral?
No, they're definitely much closer to Iran. When the Iranian foreign minister went to China, they were, if you look at Chinese social media, he was welcomed, and ordinary people saw Iran as heroic. They saw Iran as it was like David versus Goliath, and everyone was stunned that Iran was able to do this. Even friends of Iran across the world who I knew and know, they thought Iran was going to collapse. I never did, and many people here didn't. We were confident about our path, about that we were in the right, and that we were doing the right thing, and that the sacrifices that we make for the Palestinian people, the support that we give them, this is all just, and that the United States, the Trump regime and the U.S. regime and its allies, that they're the forces of evil. So we were confident about what would happen. We knew it would be painful. We knew some people would be martyred. But we were expecting victory. But I think that the Chinese were very pleasantly surprised that Iran was able to withstand this horrific assault. And the Chinese told the Iranian foreign minister, like everyone else did, that Iran's global status has been significantly enhanced as a result. So even though a lot of damage has been done to the country, they bombed factories, pharmaceutical factories, the steel industry, schools, hospitals, universities. They bombed many universities. You'd be stunned. They bombed multiple universities in Tehran, different faculties. Just imagine, like someone bombing Harvard and, Penn State, or the key universities in the United States. I'm not saying they're the best universities. I'm not big fan of some of these places that belong to the elites, and they're for the rich, and they have all these extraordinary tuition fees. But you get what I'm saying. So, but the Western media was completely indifferent about it. Just like in Lebanon today, they're slaughtering. The Israelis are bombing paramedics in Lebanon every day. They're seeking out the paramedics, but you won't see this in Western media because Western media is so completely compromised. But the Chinese, they were very pleasantly surprised. They do cooperate with Iran. The same is true with Russia. But at the end of the day, the Iranians won the war because of their own resistance, because of their own resilience, because of their own steadfastness. And the same is true today in Lebanon. Hezbollah is effectively surrounded. You see that to the east, you have these proxies that have been brought to power by the Americans. The guy, Jolani, goes to the White House, gets his perfume from Trump, and goes home happy. You have the puppets that the U.S. has installed in Damascus, the prime minister and the president, but Hezbollah is hitting the Zionist regime hard. Why? Because they believe in what they do. And why are they making these sacrifices? Because of the Palestinian people. Why are they being targeted and antagonized across the world? Because they support the Palestinian people. And one reason why we see so much hostility, not just in the West towards the Islamic Republic and the axis of resistance, but also in our region, from Arabic media and regional media, is that these countries, they themselves are complicit. They're either with the Israeli regime or they're too cowardly to stand up to it. So they try to demonize Iran, whether it's racism or sectarianism or religious hatred, whatever. They'll use that. Why? Because they don't have an argument to make about their own complicity. So they try to say that, no, those who are resisting the Israeli regime, they're not sincere. Or or they're corrupt, or they're morally bankrupt, or they're not real Muslims, or whatever. They do that in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, sadly even people around Erdogan and others, because of their deep and ugly complicity with the regime. The Emirates worse than anyone else. They have to antagonize the resistance, but it doesn't work anymore because people see through things now. People see what's going on in Gaza. They see who's doing trade with Israel. They see who's getting killed because of their support for the Palestinian people. They see who's being sanctioned. So the world is changing, and world public opinion is changing. And across the Arab world, people have been rooting for Iran, except for the Wahhabis and the Salafis who are funded by these regimes. And who cares what they think? But ordinary people on the streets are rooting for Iran against the Israeli regime and these proxies in the Persian Gulf, because they know that they don't represent them. I mean, Kuwait, Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Bahrain, they don't represent ordinary men and women in Cairo, Jordan, Morocco, or any of these things.
I did want to...
Even in their own country, I promise you, if they're allowed to speak out in the Emirates, they'd like to get rid of this guy, this Mohammed bin Zayed, for what he's done for the Israeli regime.
Right, I was going to get into that question because since we last spoke, I did see some responses from what people are calling Wahhabis. And I do want to ask you right after about why you think this war is won. Maybe it's because the Strait of Hormuz has stayed closed, although there is reports of one tanker going through and that wasn't hit by a mine. And so maybe that's what the meeting about in China is right now, that they're trying to move towards a tech-based economy rather than an economy based off of the petrodollar and oil. But since we last spoke, there were two, what people are saying is Wahhabi or...
Just before you move on, the Strait of Hormuz has never been closed by the Iranians. It's always been open. The ships that have had restrictions are those who were linked to these countries that participated in the war against Iran. Otherwise, Russian ships, Chinese ships, Iraqi ships, those who didn't have anything against Iran, they had no problem. The Oman, the country Oman, one of the 6 neighbors on the other side of the Persian Gulf, Iraqi side, they have excellent relations with Iran. They didn't participate in the war, so Oman is benefiting, is reaping the benefits. If these 5 countries that participated in the war had refrained from doing so, we wouldn't have had them. Because the Americans would not have been able to logistically be able to carry out, logistically speaking,
Right.
carry out the war.
So there is a
But in any Iran never closed the Strait of Hormuz. It closed it to those countries that were participating in the slaughter against the Iranian people.
right. So maybe there's a case to be made that the victory can be applied to the fact that the U.S. economy is affected greatly. The oil is going up, and that's what we seem to care about more than anything is the economy. But what do you think the goal is for the next 20 years in Iran? And I'm asking this question because since we last spoke, I had people like Faris al-Hamadi and Shamsi, what people are saying, some people are calling him Wahhabi, some people are calling him Salafi, and they're very critical. And although you're saying it's just the GCC countries and ordinary people are in support of Iran, I have had a lot of conversations, and even in the chat, a lot of people are saying that Iran does not care about the Muslim world and that they just care about their own dominance, and that they're talking a lot about the atrocities in Syria and what's happened across the Middle East, and that the end goal is not for Muslim unity, it's for Iran dominance. So what can we expect from the next 20 years? Because although some people are just saying it's Wahhabi backlash, a lot of people in the Arab world, especially Syrians, are very upset with what they're saying Iran has done. What can we see in terms of Middle Eastern dominance and Iran as an empire going forward?
The thing about light is, it never really dies.
Say very openly that during the war, between the fall of Syria, before the fall of Syria, I'd been on many campuses. I spoke to many students, and they definitely did not want Al Qaeda to come to power, and that was clear as day. But Iran did not support the Syrian government because they were fans of the Ba'athist Party, as I told you before. They were against it because this was a dirty war, and those who supported the CIA project in Syria, they, wittingly or otherwise, they helped the Israeli regime. There's no doubt about it. They cannot hide it. They can show whatever hostility they want to Iran, but they helped the Israeli regime. The Iranians did not support Syria because they had some love affair with Assad. His wife was Sunni, by the way. Who cares? For Iran, he could have been a Jew, he could have been a Christian, he could have been a Sunni, he could have been an Alawite. It doesn't matter. For Iran, the important thing was that the regime, the Israeli regime wanted Syria to fall because it benefited it. It benefited the Israeli, it benefited Netanyahu. It was clear. I mean, Obama did not carry out Operation Timber Sycamore because he loved the Syrian people. Mm-hmm. And those who thought that they could, take part in this and do good, and that good would come out of it, they were deeply mistaken. Now, sometimes and by the way, when I say the Wahhabis and the Salafis, I don't mean it's just them. A lot of people are influenced by the propaganda. But remember, if Iran was so if Iran was sectarian, who saved, I said this I think last time, who saved Bosnia? Except for Iran, who was there for the Bosnian people? Did Iran benefit from saving Bosnia? Or, for example, even in South Africa, which is not a Muslim country, Iran was funding the resistance against the apartheid regime. Iran has been supporting Venezuela and Cuba. Now, of course, because of the war, we can't do anything really, as far as I know. Can't do much for Cuba, but we've been supporting and helping Cuba and Venezuela despite all our difficulties.
But
those
Saudi,
Iran
did Saudi not also supply weapons and help out Bosnia in that war in the early 90s?
No. That was Iran. It was Iran who did. It's obvious. I mean, one of my friends, his brother was martyred in Bosnia. His name was Nawab in Arabic, but Nawab. He was martyred there. So, the Iranians made sacrifices. And then when the Iranian advisors and Iranian weapons and the training was scoring successes, the Americans forced the peace. Now, again, I don't want the Bosnians and the Serbs and the Croats to be at each other's throats, and I think that there has to be a solution where all the. But at that time, they were being exterminated. Or in the case of Palestine, who's supporting the Palestinians? We're being bombed because of our support for the Palestinians. There's no other reason for this.
Everywhere I go.
So, okay, if we're not sincere, why are we the ones being bombed? If you recall, I mean, you're young, but until a while back, they were saying actually Iran and the Israelis are allies behind the scenes, like they're cooperating. They're killing us. They try to starve our country. They bomb and kill our leaders. They slaughter our school children just because we support Hamas. Who is Hamas? Are they Shia? Are they Alawite? Are they Druze? For decades, the Palestinians have been taught by these very same regimes that the Iranians are your enemies. Some Palestinians never liked Iran because they believed the propaganda. But did Iran discontinue their support for the Palestinian people? No, because they're oppressed.
I always mention that when people push back and they say, "Oh, you should not support Iran. Iran's done this. Iran's done that." I always bring up the fact that Yahya Sinwar publicly mentioned the support that Iran was giving, and he said that the rest of the Arab world were nowhere to be seen, and he credits Iran. So we can't take away that credibility. One thing I haven't asked you before, and I've been...
He actually goes far beyond that. I mean, his praise for Iran, the praise of the Abu Ubaid for Iran, and the praise of the jihad leaders, the praise that they, people should go and listen to their speeches, how they would thank Iran, how they would praise Iran despite the sectarian counter-narratives that were funded by oil and gas wealth. Despite all that, despite the fact that they would pay a price, I'm sure, for their praise of the Islamic Republic and of Hezbollah. They praise Hezbollah, and not once or twice, repeatedly throughout the 2.5 years of genocide. The Abu Ubaid, who was martyred a few months ago, people should go and look and see what he says, or the spokesman for Islamic Jihad.
Right.
So these people know what Iran has done, the sacrifices that Iran has made, the Islamic Republic has made for Palestine, and we're proud of it, because the people of Palestine are victims. They're human beings. They're our sisters and brothers, and it didn't matter to us if they believed the propaganda or they didn't. It's our responsibility to help them.
Right.
And we will continue to do so. And we pay a heavy price for that. Ayatollah Khamenei was martyred for the Palestinian cause. Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah was martyred for the Palestinian cause. But these people, how many of them, where have they been on the battlefield over the years? What have they been doing?
Right.
And where do they get their funding in many cases?
Which is why I think these conversations are important, because unity, especially Muslim unity right now, is super important. Some people, I like to say I'm Muslim, I don't say I'm Sunni, but I do follow that school of thought. And you're Shia like the most of Iran.
But it's more than Islam. It's more than Islam.
It's about resistance.
Nico, this is about humanity. Yeah. We are responsible to support the Cuban people. There are 10 million people in Cuba. We don't care if they're Muslim. We don't care if they're communist. We don't care if they're,
Christian.
they're, I don't know, Hindu or Buddhist. If the people in Gaza were Jewish, and the Zionists were Muslims, and they were doing that, what they're doing now to the people of Gaza, we would resist them just like we resist them now.
Right, but
because genocide and oppression and slaughter and massacre at the hands of empire, resistance and beyond empire. But it is our responsibility as Muslims, as human beings. So this is what I think brings people across the globe together. My communist friends, and it's not just on the left, but my communist friends are very fascinated with the resistance nowadays. Why? Because they see it in a different light. because they see that this is not just about like your club or your sect or your religion. This is about our responsibility to the oppressed. In the Quran,
It says Allah.
it says that the inheritors of the in the Holy Quran, it says the inheritors of the earth are the oppressed. Actually, I had a discussion earlier with some people. We were discussing this. The inheritors of the earth are the oppressed. So if God has made the oppressed the inheritors of the earth according to the Quran, our responsibility is to the oppressed.
This is my response. When people criticize and they say, why are you supporting Iran? It's not that I don't support the state. I'm not there with blind allegiance to a government. Allah says in the Quran to stand with the oppressed. And very clearly, U.S. and Israel are oppressing Iran. They struck first. They attacked a school. It's obvious what's going on. And I've heard pushback, especially from the Lebanese community in Australia. I was just banned there. They said my character is unfit. They claimed I'm anti-Semitic because I criticize Israel, and they banned it. But before, I was speaking to the Lebanese there, and they were saying, okay, well, if Iran is standing with the oppressed, then how come they didn't strike Israel, and how come they didn't fight back against the genocide until they were hit? And their example, and they're saying this is proof that Iran does not actually care about resistance, that Iran just cares about themselves. And if they did care about the oppressed, then they would have struck Israel after committing the genocide started on October 7th.
You know, we have a saying in Persian. It says, "Kase daghtar az ash." It means the bowl that is hotter than ash is like sort of, it's not soup, but it's like a soup. The bowl that is hotter than the soup, or holier. He's more Christian, more Catholic than the Pope, right? So Yahya Sinwar is praising Iran. Abu Ubaideh is praising Iran, but the guy in Australia is saying, no, they're no good. Well, if you're so good, leave Australia and go to Gaza and go fight. But don't pretend that you're the good guy when the Iranians are the ones being sanctioned. Where do you think the money for those tunnels came from? Where do you think all the billions of dollars came from to sustain the resistance? It's just, I remember some people in Qatar were telling me, no, they found old metal in Gaza and they would turn them into weapons. Yeah, of course. That would come from Qatar, wouldn't it? But that narrative. So, Yahya Sinwar, the great martyr of Hamas, or Abu Ubaideh, the symbol of the voice of the resistance, they're the ones talking nonsense, and these guys sitting in, who moved to another continent and far away from the violence. Well, why don't they go back to Lebanon and fight with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon if they're so keen on fighting the Israeli regime? It's nonsense. The Islamic Republic of Iran stood with the resistance from beginning to end. That's why Iran is being bombed. If Iran wasn't with them, Iran wouldn't be bombed. Hezbollah wouldn't be bombed. You can make the same argument about Hezbollah. Why isn't Iran bombing Israel right now alongside, as it's hitting Hezbollah? So Iran is anti-Shia. That's nonsense. Iran is helping Hezbollah. Iran is helping the resistance in Lebanon. Iran is helping the resistance across the board. But Iran is one country. It's fighting against a coalition of 60 or 70. Which country in this region stands by Iran? Name one, except for Yemen. Which country? Hezbollah is not a country. The resistance in Iraq is not a country. And even Ansarullah in Yemen, they control most of the country, but part of the country is controlled by proxies that are aligned with the West. So who is with Iran? If you could name one country, I'd say, okay, I agree. So Iran on its own is struggling against this huge coalition, and then people are supporting this coalition when they carry out a dirty war in Syria. They say, no, the Iranians are evil. The CIA is good. In Gaza, when Iran is helping them out, they're saying, no, look, Iran is not doing enough. In Lebanon, Iran is... So it's only Iran. Iran has limited resources. Its own people are struggling. because of the war and the sanctions. I mean, the maximum pressure sanctions are starvation sanctions. They're intended to cripple a country. I think these people should be asking themselves, why is Iran so capable despite decades of antagonism?
Right.
And
I-
why is it that these Wahhabis and Salafis, and they have nothing better to do than attack Iran? And nowadays, why don't they go and look and see the history of the dirty war in Syria and say, do they really think that was it? And sometimes they counter argument. I don't know if I said this last time, but for example, they say, well, the Iranians cooperated with the United States in Iraq. No, it didn't. The only country that opposed the war in our region was Iran, even though we hated Saddam Hussein. I was wounded in the war 4 times. I was wounded 4 times. I was against the war. I was in the anti-war demonstrations in the UK. I was a PhD student back then. I participated in them. Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah spoke against the invasion. Who supported the invasion? Look at which countries hosted the United States, from north to south. They were all with Americans. Yet Iran is the one who and they say, yes, when the United States invaded, then the Iranians sent in their people. Why? Because the Iranians wanted to infiltrate and ultimately undermine the United States. Because the United States was an imperial power. The Taliban, which would kill Iranians, they'd murdered Iranians. Our differences with the Taliban were huge. When 9/11 happened, we all thought, of course, that it was just Al-Qaeda, and I don't believe it was just Al-Qaeda anymore. Back then I did.